Hey everybody, it's Friday again, and it's time for another movie retrospective. We pulled a pretty obscure one out of our asses this time around.
Yeah, this one actually has been on the list for a long, long time.
Yeah, it has. There's actually kind of an interesting story about how I ended up seeing this and how you ended up seeing, because I had actually never heard of it.
Yeah.
But you kept telling me about this movie that you saw when you were a kid.
Didn't know the name.
And you didn't know the name of it. And all you remembered was just this one scene toward the end that, like you said, really scared the crap out of you when you were a kid.
The guy had finally escaped from a haunted house, and he went down in front of a statue of a gargoyle, and he started sinking down into the mud, screaming. And I remembered other parts of it, too, but I didn't realize that they were from the same movie.
Right, I gotcha. Yeah, that happens to me, too, sometimes.
Yeah. This is a good movie, and I think it was better than... I actually think it was better than Amityville Horror.
This actually came out a little bit before Amityville Horror. I think about a year before.
Yeah.
But it's weird because I was really going to help you find out what this movie was. And so I kept Googling like different iterations of
and
phrase
it has
of
two
like
different
guys
names.
sinking.
The movie has two different names.
And I finally found it.
Yeah.
It's usually, it's more commonly known as the Evil.
Right.
Also known as House of Evil.
Right.
Or I've also seen it called The Evil Below.
Yeah.
It came out in about May 1978, I believe. And you know, I was just researching it today. Not a lot of shit about it. Yeah. Even on the Wikipedia page and stuff, like there's like a plot synopsis, but there's really no like background information on it, like, and no behind the scenes type stuff. It's actually, I think it's a Roger Corman production, or he had something to do with the production of it. Until very recently, it was only available on VHS. Yeah. Until Shout Factory actually put it out on a double bill DVD, like a Roger Corman Cult Classics double feature.
You gotta get it.
And it's on there with another movie that's called Twice Dead.
Okay.
From 1988, which I haven't seen, and I've heard isn't as good as this one by a long way.
I would sometimes get this movie confused with Legend of Hell House.
It's kind of a similar vibe.
I would see Legend of Hell House like in the 80s and maybe the early 90s and expect it to be this movie.
Right.
Because I forgot about it. I didn't know the name of this movie. How I saw this new in the theater when it came out.
That's crazy.
And I don't think it was 78. I think it was 77. I think it was right after Star Wars. And I'm going to tell you how I remember this. My little babysitter, my cutie little babysitter named Kimmy, took me to see this. And this was back in the 70s. And Kimmy was about 13 or 14. This is back when, we were kind of like free-range children. They don't do this kind of shit anymore.
I remember those days.
But your parents would give you over to young teenage girls, and they'd take care of you. It was awesome, man. She used to take me... I was, about 8. And she used to take me over to her house and all her little teenage friends and sit around in there, and they had all the black light posters, and they'd be playing Led Zeppelin and smoking pot. I didn't really know what that was. And then they'd take me to the movies. That was awesome, man. They'd pass you around, kiss on you and shit, and cuddle and pet on your hair and shit.
How cute
like your little, and then
because you were 8.
Yeah, you're like 8, and it was just like, you're like hearts and shit going up on top of my head. Yeah, it was awesome.
Teenage girls.
Yeah, teenage girls, man. And Kimmy looked just like Princess Leia.
Aww.
And that's why I know it happened right after Star Wars. And there's another clue that there was a connection to Star Wars with this movie. There's a scene where a dog runs down the hallway.
Yeah.
And people are screaming and running from it, and the dog is growling and simultaneously making the sound of a TIE fighter.
Yes.
Because the guy who did the sound in this movie also did it for Star Wars. So he used his TIE fighter effect for a fucking running dog.
And the funny thing is, like I said, there's not a huge amount of it. There's probably about 30 or 40 different like horror blogs that have done little retrospectives on it, particularly after the Shout Factory double feature came out. And you're not the only person to notice that.
Yeah.
There were a couple of other mentions of the TIE fighter sound, which is actually very funny. But this movie, it's very much in the vein. It seems like it's kind of forgotten. It's really one that doesn't get much attention, even though it's actually pretty good. And I mean, I'm super into, 70s haunted house movies. That's like my favorite horror subgenre, like no question. And even the crappy ones, I'll sit and watch them because there's just something about 70s haunted house movies that I really like. But this one, I'm not going to say that it's better than like Burnt Offerings. I'm not going to say it's better than The Changeling. or Legend of Hell House, but it's in that vein, and it's almost as good as that, I think. You can tell it's pretty low budget.
It's almost kind of looks like made for TV, and I think it looked like a really high quality made for TV even in those days.
Yeah.
But it didn't matter because it did have some pretty gruesome death scenes, and it was scary as fuck in those days. It's a lot scarier than Amityville Horror. It delivered a lot more than Amityville Horror. You actually get to meet the devil. The devil talks to you. It's pretty cool, man. Pretty cool.
Although I have to say that, like...
Oh, there's nude scenes in almost every death? No, not quite.
No, there's not. I don't really remember any nude scenes in there, other than...
I thought that black girl's clothes all got ripped off.
They did, but she still had a bra and underwear.
Okay, all right.
And do you know who that was? I'm pretty sure that was Lynn Moody, and wasn't she in Scream, Blackula Scream? That's her,
probably,
right?
Yeah.
She looked familiar.
Yeah.
Richard Crenna is also in this.
Yeah.
Probably most famous for the Rambo movies, but he's been in tons of other shit, too. Oh my goodness.
Cat tearing shit up.
The kitten's like behind us, like going, hey, pay attention to me.
Yeah.
But so there was actually some sort of big name kind of actors in this. Now, since you mentioned seeing the devil, the last like 10 minutes, the 10-minute sequence of this, where you get to see the legendary character actor, I think his name was Victor Buono, and he's playing the devil, like the white suit and everything.
Don't spoil anything.
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I have heard, now, the ending sequence of this movie is very love it or hate it. I've seen people on both ends of the spectrum that were just like, they just thought it was a great ending, or some people thought it was a stupid ending. And I've heard that there were, back in the day, some VHS prints or copies of this floating around that had the last sequence taken off. Because rumor had it that Roger Corman was like, I guess the ending didn't test well. So there were some versions that didn't have that ending, which is now is like, makes me really curious. Like, so how did they end it then? Like, what did they put at the end?
Probably would have been an ending a lot like Amityville Horror. Maybe Amityville Horror ripped that ending off where the dog falls underneath the ground, but then they come back and save the dog, and the dog comes out. It's all covered in black, and it's going to be something like that. Yeah, that was the problem with Amityville Horror. You had the Red Room, and them falling down into the blood tar pit or whatever it was. It was never quite answered what the Red Room and the devil face was all about. You just left it vague. Not in this movie. They actually deliver. They show you what's underneath the place.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, just like a lot of the haunted house type movies in the 70s, this was actually filmed. That was actually a real house. It was actually a college. It might still be standing there. I'm not really sure. It's in New Mexico. So they used that.
Really? That looked like California.
Yeah, no, it was New Mexico. Okay. And it was this huge, like, really, really big, cavernous, kind of creepy house.
Yeah.
And they put cobwebs all over. I mean, the premise of the movie, very similar to other type of haunted house movies. There's, like, a psychologist. His name is CJ. He's played by Richard Crenna. And his wife, who is a doctor. And they're buying this house for cheap because no one's lived there for years and years, and they're going to turn it into a drug rehab center.
Yeah.
So they have some of their patients, like recovering drug addicts and stuff, that are okay now, and like some of their friends and stuff. So they've all come to this place over a weekend to like clean it all up and get it all ready for people to come there and shit like that. And then, hauntings ensue. Yeah. And pretty much, I'm going to say, this is like I like how it's more, it shows some gruesome deaths. It's not super gory.
No, I wouldn't say it is, but you thought it was back in those days.
Yeah, it has a couple bloody scenes.
A lot of it was just like suggested.
Yeah, and, which I like about it, actually.
Burned up people, dead people. Just people getting electrocuted, people dying from weird psychokinesis, things flying and hitting them.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that happens. People being drug off into shadows. You're not sure what did it. It's pretty neat. And one thing that was good about it is that the cast is pretty tight.
Oh yeah.
It's a bunch of cute girls. Well, I call them girls. They actually range. They range across the age range, which they did back then in the 70s. And then a variety of guys. Got the intelligent older white guy. You got the artificial kind of imitation, what was his name? Burt Reynolds. He's like a fake Burt Reynolds. He had the Burt Reynolds mustache. He was like a guy actually doing a Burt Reynolds impersonation.
Yeah, he sort of had a Crocodile Dundee hat thing going on too.
Yeah, that was a Burt Reynolds hat. It was like Smokey and the Bandit.
I guess.
That's where they got that from. Although I think Smoking the Bandit might have predated there was a certain styles in the 70s, and there was certain kind of character types in the 70s, especially out in California. It was almost kind of like a subculture to be like a damn Burt Reynolds with a fucking mustache and a hat.
The Burt Reynolds cult.
Yeah, it's like the Burt Reynolds cult.
He just died, didn't he?
Burt Reynolds was a member of that cult. Actually, he didn't invent that. He was just a member.
He was an acolyte.
He was an acolyte of a cult that was named after him in retrospect.
Right, I got you.
Yeah, it was the California kind of. I'm a tough guy, and hey, I'm getting laid.
Those big brushy.
Yeah, I'm here to
mustaches.
I'm here to have sex with all you women. It's like that.
Whether you want to or not.
Yeah.
I have to say one thing when you were talking about like 70s fashions and stuff. Andrew Prine is in this, and he plays, I think he's a physics professor, right?
Yeah.
And he brings like one of his students / lover along with him.
Yeah.
And the 70s, man, the pants were so high and so tight. I'm like,
and then they
how
flared out.
Did they get into those pants? I mean, I remember people wearing those, but you had to be like pretty scrawny to get into those.
Well, you got to remember,
and you couldn't have any belly.
Yeah.
You had to be like pretty much skeletal.
A lot of
men and women.
A lot of the 70s kind of fashion was built around real skinny kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like, and
I don't want to coke horse.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it was cocaine fueled.
And you couldn't wear I guess that's why underalls was a big thing, because you couldn't wear underwear with that shit because you get VPL, you know what I mean?
And then and I think bras were banned during the filming of this movie. I don't think
they really were. It's so many nips everywhere. It must have been really cold in there. That's all. It's not a bad thing. It's like, nipples.
Yeah.
But like you said, I kind of like, you can tell that it's sort of low budget, but in a way, and this happens sometimes, particularly with some 70s haunted house movies, the fact that they don't have enough money to show like big splashy special effects, that usually works in its favor.
Yeah, it helped it.
Because the one scene, and I think you just mentioned it, with the girl just getting dragged up into the shadows, like on the stairs.
Yeah, and you see something in there.
Okay, well, originally, that was supposed to be, she was supposed to get dragged upstairs by, like, a little monster.
Right.
But then they didn't have the budget to show it, so they just show her, like, and to me, that's, a lot more effective, because you don't know what happened to her. Yeah. And you can, like, imagine, like, the worst thing you could possibly imagine.
You can see the feet and the legs.
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil it, but you could see kind of the feet and the legs, but it's probably better not to see it, because seeing a cheap-ass 1970s monster probably would have spoiled it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like some people, were complaining about, like, Alien versus Predator Requiem, like, it's so dark I can't see anything. The special effects on those aliens were probably so bad you didn't want to see them. It was better just to hint at what was going on.
I mean, look at what happened with Jaws. Their fucking mechanical shark broke, so Steven Spielberg was like, well, we won't show it as much. And look, it made the movie a fucking classic. It's one of the best movies ever, because you don't see it, and it's like much more threatening when you just kind of see hints of it.
A lot of these monster costumes that they use in the movies, if you saw them in normal daylight, especially up close and filmed them, would probably be on par with what Power Rangers. Remember the Power Rangers monsters and the bad guys? They're about like that. It's just
not quite Gamera level, but it's
they're about like that. It's just the difference is the lighting and how they're shot and how everything is edited, and the pacing to the edit is what makes those monsters look believable. And in the 70s, they just didn't have the filmography. They didn't have the film technology. They didn't have the equipment to do that.
Yeah, and
they just couldn't get it right.
So
the best for the 70s would have been Alien 1.
Yeah.
And it's just brief glimpses of the damn thing.
And it makes it creepier because you can't get a handle on, like, you can see it enough to give you an idea of what it might look like and how creepy it is, but you can't get a handle on how big it is or anything like that. If you look
at Alien 1, some of the deleted scenes where they show the xenomorph for extended periods of time, it looks terrible.
Yeah.
It looks terrible.
And I think that happens with any kind of, and here's the thing too, and I always felt like if you're going to make a low budget horror movie, nowadays, most people, or for the past 10, 20 years, people making zombie movies because they're easy to make. You just, like, get some of your friends, rip up their clothes, slap some flesh and blood on their face, and you're good to go. But I always felt like it would probably be better to make a haunted house movie where you don't really show much of anything. Like Paranormal Activity, for example, where it's like you don't show any ghosts, you don't show any monsters. Like, so everything is just like atmosphere and it's just like creepy and stuff. And you don't really show anything, or you just show little hints of things. And then that way, because even if you even if you're doing a zombie movie that's low budget, if the makeup looks like shit, then no one's going to take the movie seriously, right? So I feel like you might as well go the suggestive arty farty route if you don't have the money to show it. And
the ideal, I think, would be The Changeling. The way that movie was handled,
that's what I mean. That shows essentially, and like I said, the granddaddy of all haunted house movies, The Haunting from 1963, essentially showed nothing, and yet it was so creepy, because the way it was shot, like weird angles and shit like that. If you're gonna do it, go that route, because that doesn't cost anything. And if you do it right, it can be way creepier than actually showing a monster, I think. Now, that said, returning to the evil, one thing I'm going to ding this for, as soon as they get to this house, and, the realtor tells them, and I love this, in the opening scene where the two doctors are, like, looking around the place before the other people get there, and they're there with the realtor, and he tells them that the original owner, Emilio Vargas, he built it over like a fumarole, like a sulfur pit. Yeah. Where you're like, ding, ding, Satan alert. Yeah. Which I kind of love. But then almost immediately, the doctor, the woman, the wife, she starts seeing apparitions. Now, I wish that they had kept this apparition a little more ambiguous.
Yeah, looking. They shouldn't have they showed it for too long.
Because I think, like, the first couple shots of it were fine. Because they were just, like, kind of hazy. And it's like, it looked like a person, but not really. Yeah. But then, like, later on, it kind of went, like, Disney Haunted House a little bit. Like, where you could kind of see him, and he was, like, walking around, he was all white and stuff. Yeah. And it's like, I kind of wish that they had toned that down a little bit. But it's not, it's not a huge deal.
For the 70s, that was good, though.
That was a good special effect.
I remember seeing it as a kid, in the 70s, and it was impressive. And then the audience seemed to be kind of impressed with it. The standards were different then.
They were.
That particular effect didn't age well. But in its day, it was just like, oh, wow. People were. I remember people in the theater being afraid that this movie was scaring them.
It does have, like, a really creepy vibe, I think.
Yeah, it was. Later on, I saw Amityville Horror, and I think Kimmy took me to see that one too. I think.
Yeah.
What year was that?
She took you to see that 79.
79, yeah. Well, yeah, she was my babysitter for several years, maybe 4 years, maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah, she took me to see a lot of stuff, and she lived 2 houses over.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't like it wasn't like we had to import her over from the other side of town or anything. She lived on the block with us.
Kimmy from the block.
Yeah, I ought to find a picture of Kimmy. Kimmy looked just like a 14-year-old at that time, 13, 14-year-old Carrie Fisher, but she didn't have the buns.
Yeah.
Just long hair parted in the middle. Yeah.
I wonder what she looks like now.
I don't know. She's really only a few years older than me now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, because I was going to say there's only like a 5 or 6 year difference. That's nothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing. So I kind of feel like this movie, I really like. I think the way the house is shot, like the shit that happens, and I think it's like really creepy. Mm. And the house contributes because the house is like super like cavernous, and it's empty because it's no one's been in there a long time, and they're cleaning it up before they bring in furniture or whatever. So it's just like all these empty hallways and this big empty basement and all this kind of shit. And there's also kind of a little bit of, I mentioned the ghost before. The doctor is the only one that can see it. And the reason for this is because she's the only one that believes in God. Yeah. Did you catch that? That's why she's the only one that can see it. The other ones can't. So there's kind of a whole thing there's a whole faith type of thing, like underlying the whole story.
And I think they were kind of equating that also to kind of like the female psychic sensitivity angle too. In other words, like the witch theory. Talking about
that's true.
Like women are more prone to being psychic. They're more prone to being witches. They're more prone.
They're more open
to the spiritual world.
Sure.
So they know about God. I think it was almost like a druid type thing going on with it because it was 70s, and that was kind of popular in certain the hippie circles. Hippie spiritualism and Jesus and druid type magic stuff was all just part of that same.
And I should say, too, that this has that whole, and we probably mentioned it before on some of our shows about a haunting, this has that whole very common trope. It's common in horror movies. It's common on pretty much every episode of a haunting, where it's like, hey, I see a ghost, and hey, he's trying to tell us something, and blah, blah, blah. And then her husband is like, man, you're crazy. She's a doctor.
Yeah.
And he's
come on
still
now. Come on now. And
he's still mansplaining
Yeah.
and condescending and all
Yeah.
this other kind of shit until the end. I'm like, see?
Yeah, well,
And plus, I should say too, this isn't really spoiling anything, but he's the one that's responsible for all of the horrible things
I can
that
understand.
happen, so,
I can understand why they did that though, because
Well, yeah.
if everyone
jumped on board, then yeah.
if everybody jumps on board, then the tension's gone. There isn't any, because there can't be constant action. So there has to be conflict,
right, between the characters.
So,
yeah, I know why they do it. It's just.
So
It's funny because it's like they do it so often that it's like become a cliche.
I would probably put this movie very, very close to say The Legacy.
Yeah, that's another one that it's kind of similar to.
The Legacy, kind of like Changeling, Legend of Hell House,
Burnt Offerings, like I said.
Burnt Offerings. Amityville Horror.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think better than Amityville Horror.
Yeah, you said you liked it better than Amityville Horror. It's got more of a creepy atmosphere, I think. Amityville Horror, I like it, but I feel like I only like it because I saw it a lot when I was a kid, and it scared me when I was like 7.
Part of the power of Amityville Horror is that you're watching it, and before you even went to see the movie, you heard that it was based on something that really happened.
Yeah, and that
So it adds more power to it, and it really kind of cut Amityville a little more slack.
Yeah.
Because really, Amityville, when you really break it down, it looks like a made-for-TV movie. Not much happens in it. People get scared. Yeah. Not much happens in it, really.
It's weird because we just watched it. Like, I remember a bunch of shit happening. You know what I mean? I was like the pig and the fucking tar and all this other stuff.
Not as much happens as you think.
But we watched it like just probably a few months ago, maybe 6 months, a year, and I was like, wow, really not a lot happens in this. It's kind of just a lot of talking and walking around the house.
But the evil is action-packed compared to that.
It is. It's actually very well-paced. It starts out a little slow.
But it's kind of supposed to. I think it's
like it's just kind of building up, like the opening scene with the caretaker and all of that. So it starts out kind of slow, but after the people get there, it doesn't really fuck around. I mean, pretty much.
And another really good thing about this movie is that you can watch it right now for free on YouTube, and it's a good copy.
Yeah, I'll put a link in there. Some very nice person has
put it up there, and it's a
high definition.
It's an HD copy, and it's straight through, and there's no ads in it, and you can watch it for free.
And see what you think about the end, because like I said, it's kind of... I really like the end.
I liked it. It was a 70s ending.
It's weird.
It was a very 70s ending, and it just fit in with what I remember 70s culture as a kid.
It almost reminded... I know this is going to sound kind of off the wall to like other horror fans, but it almost reminded me of the ending of the Lucio Fulci movie, The Gates of Hell.
Yeah.
I think, wasn't it Gates of Hell or how? Yeah, I don't think you did. But it actually kind of reminded me of that, which is kind of, or maybe it was The Beyond. I can't remember now.
But for years, I didn't know what this movie was. I just remembered little snippets of it, and I didn't put them all together. I just remembered the guy sinking down into the mud, going, "Ah, no!"
Yeah.
And that gargoyle looking down on him. It was pretty creepy.
So that's it. But that's how I found it, by Googling different iterations of the phrase "guy sinking in mud with gargoyle statue watching," and then finally I found
came
it.
Up.
But yeah, it's got like 2 or 3 different titles. It's usually just called The Evil. If you Google The Evil 1978, you'll find it. Shout Factory has it out on DVD, like I said.
I might get that.
Roger Corman Cult Classics. The other movie that's on it is called Twice Dead, which has Todd Bridges from Different Fucking Strokes on it. But that was from 1988, and I heard it wasn't.
Wouldn't mind seeing that.
I don't know. I guess it's a haunted house movie, but I'm not really sure. It's funny because one of the channels, did we watch this on 42nd Street Films channel, or was that a different channel I was looking at?
I think it was 42nd Street.
It might have been. But there's like a channel on YouTube called 42nd Street Films, and he's got like all these really obscure fucking 70s horror. Some of them are made for TV, I'm sure. Yeah. And so I've been watching them because, like I said, 70s haunted house movies, I don't give a shit if they're crappy. I'm just going to sit and watch them. So I watched one last night called House of the Dead, which actually wasn't even about a house. It was like an anthology movie about a mortuary. And like a creepy mortuary guy that was like telling the story of how each person died, and it was like some kind of like Twilight Zone kind of shit. It was actually pretty good. It was kind of cheesy.
Most of them are bad though. You just gotta be honest. Most of these movies are bad.
And then I saw one the other night with fucking Barbara Stanwyck in it, but I can't remember what the name of it was. But that was actually pretty good. But yeah, so if you haven't seen it, like I said, this one is kind of a deep cut. It doesn't really get discussed all that much when you're talking about 70s haunted house
Nobody
movies.
knows about this
Yeah,
one.
it's kind of forgotten.
Yeah.
But it's actually pretty good. Like I said, it's I'm going to say it's like B grade. It's like not up there with Changeling or Burnt Offerings, but it's like it's pretty good.
It's on the same level technically, I would say, but technically be on the same level as Amityville.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you like Amityville, you like those type of
Yeah.
movies, then you'll probably be into this too. Got some good acting, like I said. It's not super gory, so if you don't like that, you don't have to worry about it.
It's cool.
But yeah, so anyway, we will wrap up our latest review. Remember, if you like the show, to like, share, subscribe on all your social media, share with all your friends. If you'd like to financially support the show, you can go to our Patreon page, which is patreon.com/13o'clockpodcast, or go to our blog, which is 13o'clockpodcast.wordpress.com, and there's a link in the sidebar to a PayPal account. And remember, our regular episodes come out every Tuesday, and our movie reviews come out every Friday, so check them out. We will see you next time. Bye.